We Shall Never Surrender. Edited by Penelope Middelboe, Donald Fry and Christopher Grace. Read by Jane Whittenshaw, Paul Panting, Gina Murray, Glen Mccready and Lucy Briers. The Second World War ended almost 70 years ago, and for most of us it's hard to imagine what living through it was really like. Some of us might know about what older members of our families experienced, though we may wish we had listened more carefully, or asked more when the opportunity was there. And of course, with continued fighting in Afghanistan and other parts of the world, war is still a reality for many British families today. But by and large, those of us born after 1945 have not lived in close proximity to war, as our parents or grandparents did. For them, in their millions, it came into their lives. Gas masks, rationing, blackouts, bomb shelters, the sending away of children, the conscription of men and women to battlefronts, factories and farms, the obliteration of homes, maiming and killing, the accumulation of atrocities, the persistent anxiety of separation, the spikes of fear, the dread of invasion, and the longing, 6 years of it, for it all to be over. In our search to comprehend that period of our families' lives, we chose diarists all living in Britain when the war began in September 1939. We wanted more than entries that repeated the day's news. Events, yes, seen through different eyes, but we were also after accounts that would help us empathise with those we had not questioned enough. We wanted to understand how it felt. They perhaps had future family readers in mind, but primarily they wrote for themselves. In their diaries, they can complain without being thought negative, criticise others without being disloyal, predict events without being right, reveal their fears without being pathetic, howl or rage without being heard. Although, like us, you may find yourself shifting in and out of agreement with them, we hope you will end by being glad to have seen into their lives. In 1939, George Beardmore, 31, was living with his wife Jean and baby Victoria in North Harrow. He had been unemployed and was now a temporary insurance clerk. He had no love for the work, his ambition being to earn his living as a writer. Likely to lose his job, short of money and asthmatic, he worried about being able to provide for his family and keep them safe when the inevitable bombing began. Vera Britton, 45, was married to George Catlin, G in her diary, with a house in London and a cottage in the New Forest. She had served as a nurse in the First World War. The horror of that war, including the loss of her fiancé, her brother Edward and their 2 close friends, formed a large part of her best-selling book, Testament of Youth, published in 1933. By the time war was declared in 1939, Vera was a leading pacifist campaigner. She feared that the new conflict would take yet more from her husband, her elderly mother, her 2 young children. Anne Garnett, 30, originally from London, was known by her married name, Lee Michelle. Her teenage memoirs were eventually published under her maiden name. She was married to Frank, a country lawyer who suffered from diabetes, then a life-threatening condition. They had 2 children, Sarah, 6, and Caroline, 3, also known as Toots, and were living in a detached modern house, Larks Lee, in rural Somerset. Anne enjoyed reading, played the piano, and had studied art. She was an energetic member of her church and community, but could also be outspoken and critical of established ways, and did not take well to the social duties of a solicitor's wife, preferring to have her friends round for a game of cards or tennis with drinks. How much of her world could the war destroy? Clara Milburn, 56, grew up in Coventry and married there in 1905. Since 1931, she and her husband Jack had lived in a village 6 miles from Coventry. Their only child, Alan, was 25 and back at home after university, having followed his father, now retired, into engineering. Gardening, church, walking the dog, shopping, village events, she had a peaceful routine. It would not last. Alan, as an officer in the Territorial Army, was likely to be
Sample complete. Ready to continue?